Hey, welcome to the Oakley Podcast, Trucking Business and Family. My name's Jeremy Kellett, Director of Recruiting here at Oakley Trucking. I'm your host for this podcast. This episode is a doozy. I'm telling you, this one is something that I have never ventured off in doing this, but a buddy of mine put this together, and it's with a Major General Robert Walters, and it talks about his life and his story in the U.S. Army. And it really doesn't have anything to do about trucking, to be honest with you, but it's such a fascinating story of his life. And it's really, it's kind of also promoting a book that him and another one of his guys wrote and about a mission that they were on. So it's kind of promoting that book too, but he just it's fascinating. He doesn't hold back, on telling some details and some stories that he went through. He had several deploys. I don't know, 7 or 8. I have to go back and count them and ask him, but it's in Iraq and Afghanistan and Desert Storm, but it's just a fascinating. And he talks a little bit about the family and how his family goes through these things, being a wife and daughter of a military man. And it's great. Also had my buddy David Guthrie that actually put us together, had him set in with us, and some great funny stories, through this whole episode. So I want y'all to stay tuned in and listen to this, because it's something a little different, that we're doing here on the Oakley Podcast, but it's really good. It just salutes veterans. I know we got a lot of veteran truck drivers, and I know you guys will definitely understand this episode a whole lot better. But it's really great. But before I get started on that, as always, our sponsors, we're cranking off this new year, and we just got a lot going on. We got a lot going on at Oakley too, but we got some really good sponsors that have hung with us with Aero Truck Sales. Keith over there has been great with us, and he's going to continue on. We're actually going to do more out of the Little Rock office. Arrow's opened up a place here in Little Rock, so North Little Rock, we're going to do that. And then Central Arkansas Truck and Trailer, Nathan and David Dunn down there, they've done a fantastic job. We stay in contact with them all the time. They'll take care of you. They're right down the road here in North Little Rock, so you go see them. Give me feedback. If you go there, I want to know about your service that you get from these guys. So other than that, hey, let's get started with this episode.
Aero Truck Sales in North Little Rock is now open and ready to help you get back on the road in a new-to-you truck. Their new location, just right down the road from Oakley, is fully equipped with a new 3-bay shop, a brand new facility that's just waiting for you to walk through the door, and of course, the same familiar faces to welcome you in and help you get your hands on a new rig. With in-house financing through transport funding, you can walk away knowing your investment is going to be handled with care every time. As longtime partners with Oakley Trucking and the Oakley Podcast, they are proud to provide our owner-operators with trucks that meet Oakley's qualifications and each owner-operator's individual needs. So stop in and check out the new location, and make sure to give Keith Wilson a call at 573-216-6047 and let him know you heard it here on the Oakley Podcast.
Just a little bit of background of how I met Bob. He moved to our town, what was it, probably in 77?
78, I think it was.
78. And
what town was that?
Weaver.
Right outside of Anniston.
Yep. It's
Okay.
Used to be a fort there, a base there called Fort McClellan. And his dad got transferred there from Kansas, I believe. Right off the bat, when I met Bob, it was in a parking lot at Linlock or something. I didn't like it. He was a new kid in town, and I was like, I don't even know this guy.
Coming in there to steal you women.
He was. Yeah, definitely. And the work minivan. So, but he's been a good friend over the last 40-something years. And I didn't realize, and I'm not going to speak a whole lot, Jeremy, I want you to get to know Bob. But when I started reading his book, and help me, Bob, trying to pronounce the last part, Abu Ghraib.
Yeah, Abu Ghraib.
Abu Ghraib. Okay.
Yeah.
when you start reading things like this, Bob's been a good friend, and I've always just looked at him as just I knew he was in the military and stuff, but when I started reading about this ambush at this prison, I was up to 1 o'clock last night trying to think of what that life could have been like. And you wrote this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, is what the families go through, what happens and what they're wondering and all this stuff. And when you meet Nancy, you would definitely understand. She's a very, very strong woman. I met her probably in 77, 78. She flew down to visit Bob, and he was a girlfriend from Kansas. But I was living my life thinking, what in the world? How a leader like Bob and Mr. Edwards, I believe it is, Mr. Edwards, what they were going through and what their minds and how these other soldiers would look to them for leadership. And I mean, it's amazing to me, because I look at Bob now differently, because I joke around with him and have fun and everything. But there's a difference of respect to know when you're living in that life, especially in Afghanistan, Iraq. What was it? 5, 6 tours in Afghanistan, 2 or 3 in Iran, something like that. And how he served our country. And you're right, Bob. I don't know what audience would be right for something like this, but I would think every human being alive.
Well, I just started, I looked the book up on Amazon yesterday and just started reading the first few pages, not even of the book, but the telling about you, Bob, and the other guy, Edwards, and just getting, I didn't get very far, but I'm trying to get the gist of the book and what it's about, kind of. But I got a little bit of your history there. But yeah, it's great to meet you. I know David's talked a lot about you. I've heard about you several times, and this this podcast is, I think our listeners would love a story like yours, just because there are so many veterans in the trucking business. I mean, just a bunch. We have a bunch here. And I don't know, you probably don't know anything about Oakley, but just to give you an idea, we're an owner-operator trucking company. We're the owner-operator. He has his own truck. He pulls our trailer. We have about 900 owner-operators, and they live all over the country and run all over the country with us. And we got some really good ones. And we're kind of a old school standards that we have, with our guys, very particular on who we lease on and who we work with, and just the standards that we have, are similar. We've actually had people, well, this sounds like the military over here, say that to us, just because we require them all to be clean shaven and haircut, and we really focus on customer service and that sort of deal. But I asked Guthrie, I called him on my way home last night, and I said, hey, man, I'm a little intimidated with this phone call tomorrow. I said, just meeting Bob because of what I've read so far. Can you get on there with us?
Look, hey, I'm not intimidated at him at all, but I look at him completely different. I can whoop his butt at any time. But I will tell you this. He is Bob, I wouldn't even Jeremy's got one of the most respect of anybody. When he was talking about the trucking industry, it is the largest industry in the world. Everything's done by trucking, everything. So it's brought to you by a truck driver. Yep. But there's the story, Jeremy, how we have our kids, and we see how they live and everything. Well, Bob has 2 daughters, Martina and Daytona. And in the book, there at the end, I was reading they're about how they wouldn't change anything of how they were raised through the military, calling themselves brats. And one thing that really touched me, I'm trying to make sure I don't choke up on this because it really, really touched him. I think it was Daytona, the youngest one. She was saying that they remember they would be on these military bases. And at the evening, the sound of the trumpet to lower the flag. She was saying that it's still the chilling of that and the Pledge of Allegiance and how these kids are instilled of America, different from what the generations that we see now. That people don't respect a lot of things that these people have fought and died for America. But his two girls, they went through hell. I mean, with their father gone all the time and there with their mom and moving from base to base. And then Daytona said, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Are you retired now, Bob?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like there's really so much in here. I don't know. I was trying to think of the angle we should go at it. I think it's recognizing the veterans and the sacrifices that they and their families go through, because I'm kind of getting the idea that's what this book's about, that a lot about what the families go through. But I think this just people like me, Bob. I'm very dumb when it comes to military, the rankings, the rules, my dad was in Vietnam for a little while, and my grandpa was in World War II for a little while, but I didn't get much information about it. But I would like for you to tell me, which I think a lot of people are like me, they don't understand the military. They don't understand what you guys go through. They don't, your story and how you started, how you got into it, and then some of this. I don't know how much you can tell about details of you going, on certain missions, but I think that is very interesting. I think the general public, would really, really focus on that.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a little background first, and then if I start boring you to death, just cut me off, whenever you think it's appropriate. So I'll start here in high school here in Leavenworth, which is where I live now, Leavenworth, Kansas. Nancy and I met in high school here, and my dad was assigned to the college that's here on Fort Leavenworth, where, like half of all the Army majors go every year to, part of their professional military education. And her dad got assigned here the same summer, and this was the summer of '77. And he was in charge of the Marine detachment at the disciplinary barracks. Now, the disciplinary barracks is where we send all military prisoners, guys that have screwed up in the military, broke a law, were court-martialed and sent to jail. So they're sent to the jail here in Fort Leavenworth. And he was in charge of the Marine detachment. So he was a master gunnery sergeant, and he was, in there with the prisoners every day, and he's in charge of the guard. So he is hard as a rock, mean as a snake. And the last thing he wanted was for his oldest daughter to be dating the son of an Army officer. So that's where I started out on the family totem pole, right down there at the bottom. And I used to hate, I was 15, she was 15. I'd drive my bike across post to where they lived, and I hated it when I saw his car in the garage or the driveway there, because when I went and knocked on the door, and if he answered, I'd extend my hand and he would just crush it, just crush it. My knees would, go weak. And that's how we met. We dated that first year. And then my dad got us, the school here is only a year long. And then away he goes to Fort McClellan. And that's where I met David and the rest of the team from Weaver. And then Nancy and I maintained a long distance relationship for that first couple years. Then after I graduated from high school, David and I graduated at the same time. I went up to Jacksonville State University, which is just right up the road there, and was in ROTC, the Reserve Officer Training Corps, and, just going to college, a college kid. And Nancy and I got back in touch, and she came out on Thanksgiving, my sophomore year, and we decided to get married. So we got married on Valentine's Day up on top of Cheehawk Mountain, which is the highest point in Alabama. and David was there along with some of our other buddies. And then that's where the story began. That was in February of 1981. And then in August, we're down in Florida. I'm working at a paper mill in Florida. That's where my side of the family was from. And there's no place on earth I would want anyone to have to work than a paper mill in Florida during the summertime. It is a horrible existence. Don't recommend it to anyone. Anyway, that's what I was doing because it paid well, and 2 college kids needed money. So I came home from my shift one day, and Nancy's crying. And I said, "What's the matter, honey?" And she says, "Well, I'm pregnant." And I said, "Well, this is great. We wanted to start a family." She said, "We don't have any health insurance." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I never thought about health insurance, being an Army brat, and she was a Marine brat. So I said, "Let's go get some." So we hopped in our VW Bug and drove down to the Blue Cross Blue Shield. Went in there, waited for an insurance agent, and the guy came in. We finally got into his office, and I said, "Hey, do you have health insurance policies for married college couples?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, we got some great ones." I said, "Oh, what a relief, because she's pregnant." And he goes, "Well, that's a pre-existing medical condition, so we can't handle that one." So I was like, "Okay, Mr. Insurance Agent, I don't need your help." So I got up, we walked out right down to the Army recruiter. And I walked in there and said, "Hey, I need a job, and I need it today." So I took the test, and they said, "Hey, you did pretty good on that one. Take this other test." So I took that one. He said, "Okay, you've got 3 choices if you want a job today." And I said, "What are they?" He said, "Well, you can be a Chinese linguist, an Arabic linguist, or a Russian linguist." And I said, "Well, if I go with Russian, will we get to go to Germany and be stationed in Europe?" And he goes, "Yeah, probably." I said, "Okay, I'll take that one." So that's how I did it. So resigned my ROTC commission, signed up for the Army, and off I went.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
after basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, went to DLI, Defense Language Institute, in Monterey, California for Russian, and then did some more training in San Angelo, Texas, and off to Germany for my enlisted tour, where I was listening to the Russians back during the Cold War. At this point, we had Martina, our oldest, who was a little toddler at the time. And then I made it up to Sergeant E5. So I started out as a private. Okay. So I went it was just a private when I came in, and got up to Sergeant. And then Nancy's pregnant with Daytona, our second daughter. Well, I needed a pay raise. So I had a rock star as a warrant officer. I wanted to be just like that guy. So I put in a warrant officer packet. And then I had a knucklehead as a lieutenant. All he did was sit around his office and shine his boots all day. His boots looked really good, but he was just a knucklehead. And I knew I could be better than that guy. So I put in an OCS packet, and I was not selected to be a warrant officer, but I was selected to go to officer candidate school and become a lieutenant. So that's what I did. Came back. Nancy stayed in Pennsylvania at the War College where my dad was going at the time with Martina. And she actually had Daytona while I was in officer candidate school. And the way that worked back in the time, I'm in the formation with, 45 other guys, officer candidates, and the TAC officer comes out and says, "Candidate Walters, front and center." So backed up, turned, went around, ran up there, reported, "Sir, Candidate Walters reports." He said, "Walters, congratulations, you're a father. You get 10 minutes of phone privileges." So off I went to call Nancy to see how she was doing. She was out and recovering. My dad answered the phone, said, "Hey, you guys got a little Daytona?" And I said, "Okay, great." And then we chatted for a few minutes, and then I went back to the grind there. Yeah. And then, so after that, we got to link up together again, go to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, which is where the Intel Center is at, because they made me I wanted to be an infantry guy, and they said, "Well, you've got a top secret security clearance. You speak Russian. You're going to be Intel." And I said, "Okay." So off I went to Fort Huachuca. After my time at Huachuca there, and while I was at Huachuca, I did get to go to Ranger School, so that was good.
Where's Huachuca at?
Yeah, that was a good Benny there. Went to Korea
where's
for a year.
Where's that located, Bob?
Fort Benning, Georgia is where Ranger School is headquartered. Now, there's different places that you go while you're there. So you do the first, we call it City Week, which is right there at the Cantonment area at Benning. Then you go out to Darby, which is a training area out in the woods there at Benning. And then you go up to Dahlonega, which is up in the mountains of northern Georgia, and you spend a mountain phase. And then you go, at the time, we went out to Dugway Proving Ground in Utah for the desert phase. Then you go to Florida for the swamp phase. And you jump into every one of these things and then go on missions. And it's really it's a leadership school, but it's very difficult. And, you don't get to sleep like an hour or two a day, and you get one MRE a day, and you're constantly moving. You're outside the whole time. You're sleeping on the ground next to your buddy and, trying to stay awake. So, because you don't want the ORI, the ranger instructor, to come up to you while you're snoozing there. So, you got to, at least one of you got to stay awake the whole time. So anyway,
Bob, how many was in Ranger School with you at that time?
How many soldiers that were going through?
We
started out with about 100, and we had like 30 graduate. So
where did you graduate at?
Oh, I was just one of the Joes. I could have been number 29 or number 2. Who knows? So I was just, it didn't matter. I just wanted to get out of there. It was funny. On my last jump into Florida, I had a really poor body position when I left the aircraft, and it threw my helmet forward and it busted my nose. I still got a scar right here. And I had, blood all over my face. It felt like I just got hit right in the face when I came out of that airplane. And I was riding the guy's pack tray out in front of me. So I'm sitting on his parachute, and he's cussing at me to get off of his chute. Because you start, the chute starts to collapse when you get a, 200-pound guy sitting up on top of it. So I'm trying to get off of his chute. He's screaming at me, and my face is on fire. I fall off of his chute and slide off his chute. Then my chute deploys. I hit the ground like a ton of bricks, so I didn't have time to lower my rucksack or anything. And because I'm in Florida in the swamp, my face gets cellulitis. Well, at graduation, 2 weeks later, my eyes are like closed because my face is so swollen, and I'd lost 25 pounds. I was weighing like 175 at graduation, and Nancy is at graduation, and she's, once, it's time to get your Ranger tab pinned on, people start walking through the guests start walking through the formation there. Nancy walked right past me. She didn't even recognize me. I go, "Hey, where are you going?" She goes, "Oh my gosh, what did they do to you?" So anyway, just an aside, our number 2 grandson, Zach, Martina's son, he's in Ranger School now. He started Sunday, so he's going through all this. I just told him, embrace the suck and don't quit, and you'll be fine. So, but anyway, after Korea, get back to Bragg, and we go Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And this was a pretty good story. I went through jump refresher. It was like 3 days of jumping out of, towers and stuff and getting ready to be on airborne status again. And I go back to the battalion area, and the place is going nuts. I have no idea what's going on. I'm walking up the steps to the S3's office, the operations officer. He's a major. I'm a brand new captain, no time and grade captain. And here comes the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel. I put myself up against the wall, hoping he walks right past me because I have not a clue what's going on. He stops, he looks at my name tag, and he says, "Walters, are you ready to take command?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Do you know what's going on?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Are you read on yet?" And that's read on to your security clearance. I go, "No, sir." He said, "Get over to Corps and get read on." "Yes, sir." And then he goes storming off. I go upstairs to the S3, and he's just rolling, laughing. And I go, "What's going on, sir?" He said, "Walters, you don't know how lucky you are." He said, "Saddam Hussein has invaded Kuwait. We are going to war. The Charlie Company commander just got relieved, and you're the only captain without a job." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, where's Corps at?" I had no idea. So anyway, and then off I went to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So that was my first deployment to Iraq. After that, I spent a little bit of time at Bragg before I went off to Task Force 160. Those are the Night Stalkers, the guys that went into the Caracas, Venezuela on Saturday night. I was in that unit. Those aviators. I was an intel officer for those guys. And during our time there, we did Somalia and Haiti were the 2 contingency operations that we did while I was there. After that, I went to a special mission unit that's in JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. And that was the command that ran that operation on Saturday. And in that, you go through assessment, training and assessment, or assessment selection process. After that, I came out of that, and they put me through the training pipeline. And then my first job, I was down in Colombia, South America, chasing narco terrorists, and working out of Bogota. and Cali, Colombia. We were going after Miguel Oriella and his brother Herberto. It took me like me and my buddies, we were doing back-to-back deployments down there for about 5 months at a time. It took me three deployments before we finally caught those guys, and we got them, and they're in jail in Miami or someplace right now. So it took a while. After that, I went to Bosnia, chasing persons formerly indicted for war crimes. And these guys were the ones, mostly Serbs, that were killing Muslims and stuff back during the Bosnian War. And we were chasing those guys. We would find them, fix them, and then we called it finish them, or we'd roll them up. If they didn't resist, we would capture them and we'd send them to The Hague, where they were prosecuted for war crimes. Did that, and then after that, came here to Leavenworth for my my Command and General Staff College. And then after that, I went to Battalion Command, and that's when Abu Ghraib thing came up, was Battalion Command. We went to Germany. In Germany, the first stop was down in Kosovo, because we had some guys down there supporting the peacekeeping efforts. And then came back from that. We started the train up to get ready to go into Kuwait for OIF, Operation Enduring Freedom, which was in 2003. And so did our preps for that, went down to Kuwait, did the invasion into Iraq, was up at Balad, which is north of Baghdad, where we were doing operations in that area. And then I got the call from the brigade commander. I was a lieutenant colonel. He was a colonel, full colonel. He calls and says, "Hey, we need you down at Abu Ghraib." And I was like, "Roger, sir, we'll go down there tomorrow." Got a convoy, drove down there. Place was horrible, absolutely horrible. And there was 7,000 or so Iraqi detainees in there. And there was an MP battalion there. And then there was a small detachment from another intel battalion that was doing interrogations. And our job was to establish security, around the perimeter, and to improve the infrastructure of the facility. And then we were doing patrols, so we were getting mortared every day. So we were doing patrols to go out and kill the guys that were trying to mortar us, because they were not just killing us, they were killing and wounding U.S. personnel, but they were killing Iraqis too. And they were under our charge when they're in that facility. And so we were going out doing surveillance missions. And then if we caught the guys, we would shoot them. And that's how that worked.
So Bob, when they were killing, I was reading in the book, the Iraqis that were in this prison, I mean, they could be right in the center of it, and these people would be shooting mortars inside there, and there was nowhere for, they would try to run and hide, but they would kill their own people, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's why we were going out there trying to get the guys that were doing it. So, yeah. And if the Abu Ghraib is between Baghdad and Fallujah, so it's not a nice neighborhood. And every night we were going out, it was a gunfight every night. So every night when our Humvees would come back, they had bullet holes in them. From the gunfights, we would get in out there. So anyway, did a year in Iraq for that one. Came back and then went back to the Special Mission Unit as a squadron commander now, which is still a lieutenant colonel position, but it's working back for JSOC. And we were bouncing between Iraq and Afghanistan. So we would go forward. And at this time, it was General McChrystal. You may have heard of him, a famous Army general, but he was the JSOC commander at the time. And we were bouncing between Iraq and Afghanistan, and we're going after high value targets. And our job was my squadron, our job was to find and fix the enemy high value target. And then the Delta guys or the SEAL Team 6 guys would go in and either capture them or shoot them if they resisted. So if Delta kicks in your door, don't resist. Okay. Just don't resist, because if you resist, it will be short lived. I guarantee it. So did that for 2 more years. Then after that, went to the War College. And then from there, went back to brigade command at Fort Hood, where now I'm a full colonel. Deployed the brigade to Iraq, did another year in Iraq up on the northwest portion of Iraq. We were in charge of intercepting foreign fighters that were coming in from Syria. So I had a Marine battalion underneath me, aviation battalion, and then 3 intel battalions. And we were tracking, doing intel surveillance, reconnaissance, and then rolling up the foreign fighters. We would interrogate them, then turn them over to the host nation. After brigade command, I went back to JSOC at Bragg as the J2, the senior intel officer. And now I'm working for Admiral McCraven, and I was there for 3 years doing that.
So here's the strange thing, though, Bob, before you speak, is that here's a kid that I knew in high school that we joked around. I even shot him in the eye. I mean, put him in the hospital. Do you remember that, Bob?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And then I would go up there to feed him Jell-O and just rub it all over his face. But anyway, here's a kid. And he was a kid. All of us were just kids in high school. And when I heard this story, I'm thinking, I ain't seen or done nothing in this world with this man.
Can you imagine?
Just to see that and go through life like that. So I look at him completely different, even just reading the book now, because I'm not a big reader, but I made up my mind last night. I read about half of it last night, and then I skimmed through some of the other parts, and then it flips you out when you really start paying attention to what's in this book and what these families and what's going on in this prison. Just Bob skimmed over that prison part, but they were hanging. Places in there where they would hang people. I had these hooks and everything in the ceilings, and these floors would pull away and they would drop, and they would. These are cruel. These are people that will cut your head off. Bob's dealing with this day to day. So you got to understand my point of knowing this human as a kid. And then after college, we all went on our separate ways. We met a couple of times in Fort Bragg, and, your kids put on a show for us and stuff and all that kind of stuff. We've always been close, but, these things have, separated us for a while. And you don't really think about all this stuff until I really started digging deep into the book, and I started imagining, and then even what the kids go through and how they speak about their father. It is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
These military. So this is why I wanted people. We don't get anything from this, Bob, whatsoever. I just want people to be aware. And Jeremy knows I'm very heavy in I advertised for 10, 12 years to help promote the Wounded Warriors through the trucking industry, and then Reefs Across America. And people don't really know everything that's going on. And for this war right here, you don't know, but a lot of people don't even know this existed.
Right.
Hey, Jeremy, a quick story. I was a lieutenant at Fort Huachuca. I was a company executive officer. So, just bottom of the totem pole, brand new officer. And David would call, and we always had somebody, it's called the charge of quarters, the CQ. So some kid, some private that sits out there and answers the phone and directs the messages, phone traffic to the right, office, whether it's the company commander, the XO, the senior drill sergeant. David would call and say, "Hey, this is General Guthrie. I want to talk to Walters right now. Go get him. I don't care what he's doing. Go get him. Tell him General Guthrie's on the phone." Some kid would come running down to my office and say, "Sir, there's some general and he is upset, and he's upset with you."
Did you just start laughing?
Yes, I would start laughing.
So, hey, and it is funny because his dad, and I loved his dad. When Bob was in high school, his dad was a full colonel. What was?
Yeah, no, he was a lieutenant colonel when you met him.
Lieutenant colonel. But every time you call, there was no cell phones back then. When you called the house, his dad would say, "Lieutenant Colonel Bob Walters," or whatever. And I would say, "I don't care who you are." And he'd go, click. He'd hang up on me every single time. He liked me. You could tell he was strict. And I won't tell the story. I'll tell you later about Bob coming down after our football game one night we played, and his dad had him up at 6:30, 7 o'clock busting wood after our football game. And Bob came down to the service station, and we were all waiting on the lady to deliver the papers so we could see what the paper wrote about our football game and who was in the paper and stuff like that. And Bob came down there in the Jeep to get some gas and for the chainsaw, because he had to go back up. And there was three of us, me and Stan and David and myself. We talked Bob into taking us, this is like 9 o'clock in the morning, to the beer store out in Cedar Springs. And he was supposed to be back in 10 or 15 minutes. Now, you got to understand, his dad's a strict military guy. Okay? We're taught Bob into screw the gas right now. We'll be back in 30 minutes. I think it was 2 or 3 o'clock that afternoon because we were riding in a field. And again, I'll tell you this later because I want Bob to get back to the store. But put it this way, Bob wanted me to come home with him, and I wasn't about to go that direction. So anyway, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. So after JSOC, I got promoted to 1-star, Brigadier General is what it's called in the Army, and went up to DC for a short period of time while they were waiting for a position for me to open up, and which was out at Colorado Springs. And I was the J2, or the Senior Intel Officer, for NORAD and NORTHCOM. So NORAD is the organization that's combined with Canada, and we patrol all of the airspace in North America. And we have fighters all around both countries that whenever our sensors pick up like a Russian Bear, which is one of their strategic bombers, coming across into our airspace, we'll launch fighters up there to intercept them and run them back out of North American airspace. And then the NORTHCOM, which was the second hat I had in the U.S. Northern Command, we did relationships for theater security cooperation with Mexico and the Bahamas, as well as Canada. And again, that was more of military support or defense support to civilian requirements. So a hurricane is an example. Hurricane wipes out a town, New Orleans. Then the local, state, and officials can only do so much. Then the governor will request federal support, and FEMA will go in there, and then NORTHCOM will send military forces in, whether it's the Guard or whatever, what have you, in order to support the local agencies to reestablish, power, sewage, all of that kind of stuff. So that was a unique job for me there. I was there for a couple of years because it wasn't, killing bad guys. It was, helping people in North America, and then running Russians away when they came into our airspace. After that, I went to SOCOM, Special Operations Command in Tampa. I was still a 1-star there. And that was in charge of all SOCOM, all special operations forces through all services. I was working for General Votel as a senior intel officer, making sure everybody had what they needed to go out and do the missions, kind of like the one that just happened on Saturday. And then from there, I got selected for 2-star and went to Afghanistan. I was a senior intel officer in Afghanistan. The big operation we did there, 2 of them. One was we killed Mullah Mansour in Pakistan. This was the lead guy from the Taliban at the time. So the issue was it was in Pakistan. Okay, if we killed him in Afghanistan, it would have been no big deal. But the fact that it was in Pakistan, the last time we went into Pakistan was when we did the UBL raid, both of which have political ramifications because U.S. forces invading a Muslim country and a nuclear capable Muslim country. So that was twice we did it in, a span of 6 years or so. So we got through all that. And then we dropped the Moab. The Moab's the mother of all bombs. It was a huge thing. It's like the size of a refrigerator truck in the back of a huge airplane. And he pulls it out, and that thing goes down and just takes out an entire town. We dropped that because the Taliban, and it wasn't the Taliban, it was ISIS-K, ISIS Khorasan province, they had taken over a town and they kicked all of the locals out. So it was like their training ground. So we could go in there and fight them incrementally and lose a lot of guys, good guys on that, or we could drop a Moab on them. So we dropped the Moab on them and just flatten the entire place. It looked like the surface of the moon after the dust settled.
Wow.
And then after that, I went to Fort Huachuca as the commanding general there, and I was there for 2 years, and I retired out of that job. Since then, I've been training division and corps senior intel officers. It was called my job here is now called highly qualified expert - senior mentor. So I'm a senior mentor training, the next generation of, intel bubbas that are, going out overseas and doing good things for our nation. And then I teach at the Air Force's War College, an online class. I was online this morning doing that. So, and then Nancy and I are retired here in Leavenworth, Kansas. Her dad retired here, so her 5 brothers and sisters are in the area, and all her nieces and nephews. So that's good. Martina's in Johnson City, Tennessee, with her family, and she's the director of the VA hospital there. And then Daytona is a pastor with Elevation Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and she's having some health conditions right now that we're working through, but everything, life is good.
So, Bob, reason I was asking you last night about Daytona Martinez was we have Jeremy's probably aware of this at our office down in Tuscaloosa. There's a praise channel where everybody puts anybody that they know, clients, or any of this. We put their name on that, and then everybody prays for that family and stuff like that. It's really cool what they do down in Tuscaloosa. So this morning I put her name on the list.
Well, thanks, Dave. I appreciate that.
Story. So, but you were going real fast. So his daughter, that's in Johnson, Tennessee, Daytona. I get him.
That's Martina. Yeah,
Martina.
The older daughter.
She was in Minnesota for a long while, but Bob actually was the one that went in and swore her in at the in Johnson, Tennessee. So, to have your 2 daughters that have lived this military life, and when you read this at the end of the book, the daughters are talking about a little bit more about growing up under this military, but just to have, you could tell, how proud they are of their father, and then for him to be able later on in life to be able to do this for her daughter that just got over the whole the veteran hospital right there in Johnson, Tennessee. So pretty amazing stories.
Big deal.
It is. It's a big deal. But to Bob, this is a day in the life of the Army, I think, because the way he speaks of it, it's like we're sitting here thinking, wow, and I've heard a few of these stories, but, actually try to live that life of what can you imagine the terrain, Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iran and all this stuff? And here as a general, I'm assuming you have to put on a backpack and dress just like they do, and you're not sitting back here just doing, what's going on. And it just, to be able to know someone, you can say you admire somebody, but I brag on you all the time. I keep this was an invitation to get to come. And I've showed everybody in this office when they come in here. They said, how you know him? I said, I about shot his eye out. He ain't nothing. But anyway, I want him to know the story that you did that for your daughter.
Yeah. So as the director of the VA in Johnson City, Tennessee, the medical center, she was a senior executive service. So, you go up in the civil service within the federal government, like a GS, 4, GS 5, up to GS 15. And then if you get selected for a SES position, that's like it's equivalent pay wise to a 1-star general. Well, in order to swear her in, another SES has to do it. And my job as a senior mentor, I'm an SES. So I got to go down to Johnson City and swear her in front of all of her team there. So it was an honor for me. and Nancy was there as well, and our other daughter Daytona. So we had a big family reunion while we were there. So, but Jeremy, I didn't talk about the book at all.
That's what I was fixing to ask you.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the book.
Okay. So what happened was I retired on 31 October of 2019, and shortly after that, COVID hit. So, first off, going from a 2-star general as a, commanding general of a post and, going 100 miles an hour all day, every day to COVID lockdown, it was a tough transition for me. Bill Edwards, the guy that co-authored this with me, he was my battalion executive officer. He was a major when we were in Abu Ghraib. And then the other guy, Paul Zanin, he's an author that Bill had met in London. So he's a UK citizen. And we got together and we talked about it in a similar type format that we're doing right now. And we just gave Paul the story of Abu Ghraib and what had happened there. And he said, we can write a book about this. He said, this is a great story. And so the way we put it together is we went through and we sort of came up with like the chapters, and laid out the chapters. And then we would have a Zoom call like this, and we would talk through our memories of that particular topic, and between Bill and I. And then
was that hard to do, Bob?
No. It was, it's just our recollection. We had some tough times there, but you sort of compartmentalize that, and you focus on the positive stuff. You focus the troops on the mission. Always got to do that, and otherwise it just gets overwhelming. And so we would talk through that particular episode that was going to be a chapter in the book, and then Paul would do a rough draft of it, and then he would send it to Bill. Bill would go through and edit it and add stuff, take stuff out. Then he would send it to me, and I would do the same thing. Then we'd send it back to Paul. Paul would go through it and get sort of a final draft. And then we would all chop on that one more time. And then we'd go to the next one. So we did this over like a 5-month period of time. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. Plus, it was something to do to get my mind off of, transitioning out of the Army and everything else. So that's how we did it. Now, just a quick storyline. So we were up in Balad, north of Baghdad. The boss calls us to come down to Abu Ghraib because he just got put in charge of that forward operating base. Like I said, it was in a bad neighborhood. There was like 8,000 Iraqi detainees in there. And they're in a fenced-in area with just tents. And there was an MP battalion there that was under just very weak leadership. The battalion commander, and I'm a lieutenant colonel at the time, the battalion commander was a nice enough guy, but he was a National Guard guy or reservist. I can't remember which. But anyway, he was like a nuclear physicist or something, so he was a super smart guy, pleasant guy, but he was he was not in his comfort zone leading soldiers in a wartime area, getting shot at every day. He was not comfortable with that. So he would go to one meeting a day, and then he would hang out in his where he slept, which was also his office, and he would stay there all day. He wouldn't go around to see what was going on. He didn't know anything was happening. So, I talked to him. I talked to the lieutenant colonel that was in charge of the interrogations. And this guy was, it sounds like I'm bad-mouthing all the other lieutenant colonels there. And I am, because it's true. This guy was really overweight. He was a reservist as well. And he had like, peace written on his helmet, like he was a private in Vietnam, and he's a lieutenant colonel. You just can't have that kind of stuff. And I called him aside. I said, hey, you got to scratch that out. I said, you're a lieutenant colonel. My soldiers are going to be seeing you walk around, and if they think it's okay for you to do it, they're going to start doing that. And I'm going to crush them if they do that. And I said, don't put my soldiers in that situation. And so he and I didn't get along at all. But the brigade commander said, hey, I want you in charge of the entry control point. I want you in charge of all the towers. I want you perimeter security, and then build up the infrastructure, because the MPs had been there since like August. Maybe July. And it's now the first week after Thanksgiving when we showed up, our battalion showed up. And so we started doing all that stuff. I'm on day it's like the 3rd of December. So I'd been there less than a week, and I'm going through checking towers. So when I say checking towers, I go up there. There's be a couple soldiers up in the tower, and I said, okay, what are your special instructions? And they have to tell me what their instructions are, what they're supposed to be doing up there in that tower. And if they got it right, good. If they didn't get it right, I'd correct them. Say, no, you got to do this, you got to do that. What's your range limitations? How far can you fire to the left? How far can you fire to the right? What are your rules of engagement? You can't just shoot at somebody just because they're walking by outside of the compound there. But if they're shooting at you, you shoot back. And that's the biggest challenge with young soldiers. A lot of times, somebody will start shooting at them and they'll get down, even though they have a weapon, and they won't shoot back. Okay. Because they're used to, if they haven't been in combat, they're used to shooting at paper targets or plastic targets. Shooting at a person is a different, thing altogether. And so we got to get them to shoot back. And when somebody shoots at you, you shoot back and you shoot to kill. But that's a mindset, and you got to coach them on that. So I was going from one tower to the other, and then here comes a warrant officer who was a criminal investigation division guy. So he was a police officer, like NCIS type guy. And he shows up and he's got this disc, and he said, "Hey, sir, I got this disc, and I wanted to show it to you." And I go, "Well, what is it?" And he goes, I think it's detainee abuse." And I go, "Are you kidding me?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Well, where'd you get it?" He says, "Somebody slid it under the door to my hooch last night." And I popped into the computer, looked at it, and then I came to see you. I said, "Has anybody else seen it?" He goes, "No." And I said, "Okay, so what I want you to do, I want you to go straight to Colonel Pappas's office. He was the brigade commander." And I said, if he's not there, you wait outside his door until he gets there, and then you tell him everything you just told me. And I said, but include your best recommendation on how to conduct a criminal investigation into detainee abuse, because that's what he's going to want to do as soon as he sees this. And he's like, "Roger, sir." And he said, "Do you want to look at it?" And I go, "No." I said, "None of my guys do anything with the detainees, So I'm sure my guys aren't on there, but these other two battalions, they definitely are going to be interested. But don't take it to them. Take it to the brigade commander, and then let him conduct the criminal investigation." So that's how it got started. So I had that disc with all those pictures of detainee abuse in my hand for 30 seconds, and then I gave it to him. It went off, and then they did the investigation, and that went on for a period of, all of December, January, and then in the end of February is when another battalion came in to relieve us, because we've been there a year at that point, and we were convoying out. So we're convoying out, and it takes 2 days to get out of Iraq when you've got 100 vehicles. And I'm about halfway back, and I get a call from the provost marshal, which is the senior military policeman in Kuwait. And he says, "Hey, Colonel Walters, I need you to come by my office." And I said, "Okay, where are you at?" He said, "Well, I'm at Camp Doha." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I can't get there until tomorrow." He said, "Well, I'd like for you to come by today." And I said, "Well, I'm in the middle of Iraq, sir. I got 100 vehicles with me, and I can't get there physically until tomorrow, but I'll come by tomorrow." And I said, "Can I ask what this is about?" And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you when you get here." I said, "Okay." So the next day I get down there, and as soon as I go in, they read me my rights. And there's 6 lawyers there, and they start peppering me with questions about that detainee abuse. And, and I said, "Hey," I said, "we don't have anything to do with the detainees. We didn't touch them. We didn't handle them. We didn't, we did the perimeter security and entry control point. We didn't do anything with detainees." And they didn't believe me. They just kept asking me over and over again. I just kept saying the same thing. And finally they said, "Okay, you can leave, but don't leave the country yet." And I'm like, "Okay." And, I was like, I'm going to wash all these trucks. I'm going back to Germany, and, I'll give them my forwarding address, and they can come see me there. But it took us a week or so, 10 days to get everything washed. And by that time I went back to see the provost marshal. And I said, "Hey, sir, we're scheduled to get out of here tomorrow, and I'd like to go back with the battalion when we go back to Germany. And I'll be in Germany at my, battalion headquarters if you need to, follow up with anything." He said, "Okay, go ahead and go." So we went back to Germany, and then what was funny was like 2 months later, I'm in my office, and my counterintelligence warrant officer sticks his head in my office door and says, "Hey, sir, we found some classified information on the internet." I said, "Okay." I said, "Find out the IP address of whoever posted it and send it up to brigade and let them deal with that." And he goes, "Well, your name's on it." I'm like, "Holy shit, print it!" So he printed it, and it was the Taguba report. And Taguba, General Taguba, was the officer that was conducting the investigation into Abu Ghraib and the 800th MP Brigade. So yeah, it may still be on the internet if they haven't suppressed it, because they'll go through and try to suppress things by putting pictures of kitties and puppies on that same website until it's so far away, it's hard to find. But yeah, it was on the internet, still had secret, stamped on it. And I was like an annex, one of the colonels that they had interviewed on it. And the guy said, when I said, "Brendan," he said, "Don't worry, what they said about you was all good." I said, "There's nothing good about an intel colonel and a classified document on the internet. I guarantee you, there's nothing good about that." Yeah, I thought I was done at that point, but it worked out.
Well, good.
So that's what the book's all about. But before we finished it, I talked to Paul and Bill, and I said, "We're missing the piece about our families." Because they were in Germany, and the Germans were not excited at all about the U.S. going into Iraq. They were totally against it politically, and they talked about it on their local news and talk shows and everything else in Germany. And they were doing things outside the various Kasernes. A Kaserne is a military base in Germany, and like a fort here or an air base here. They're called Kasernes, spelled with a K. And we had to take our nameplates, like in front of my house, it said Lieutenant Colonel Robert Walters. Had to take that off. We couldn't fly the American flag in front of our house because there was so much animosity from the German populace, and our families were going through all that stuff. And then Daytona went through a health issue there, and it was very tough on her and Nancy both. And so we captured those things, and then Bill captured the stuff about his family because he has 2 daughters as well. And they were going through similar challenges being back in Germany. So that's really what the book's all about. It's about leadership in a very difficult situation, and how we dealt with it. And it wasn't just our leadership of Bill and I's, but it was the team. The company commanders, the sergeants, the warrant officers, all coming together with focus on the mission to do the right thing.
Did they interview a bunch of those people too?
No, they interviewed Bill and I, and then both of our families.
Okay.
So yeah, Paul did the same type of deal with that format that we did. They did the same thing with Nancy and Martina and Daytona, and then with Dana and their two daughters.
You fix say something, Guthrie?
Yes, one part of the book that I was reading was, how we, as truck drivers, if they get in a wreck, you have to go get the truck and bring it back to the shop, and they're doing maintenance and all this kind of stuff, for the trucking companies or owner operator. One part of the book it was talking about where all these vehicles get just blown away and everything, but they go back and they retrieve these vehicles and they're tugging them and bringing them back so they can fix them and have maintenance. And I mean, it's all this logistic stuff behind the scenes that you don't even really know that has to happen in war.
Yeah.
And I would just think that the fighting part would be easier than all the logistics of trying to get power, all this kind of stuff that you have to set up in a country that's not yours. I mean, it's not like you pick up the phone and call Alabama Power and say, "Hey, can you turn on some lights and everything?" But the courage to be in battle and all this stuff and going out there and having to retrieve and get your equipment and all this, it's fascinating to me.
Bob, did you have any connection, or have you through your life with trucking or truck drivers or transportation?
Obviously with David and my brother-in-law, Nancy's younger brother, Matt Peterson. He's like a mechanic supervisor for JB Hunt and over in Missouri. And he's been with them. He was in the Navy when he was young, right out of high school. He did like 4 years. And I think he got into diesel mechanics while he was in the Navy. And then he got out and he went to work for JB Hunt. He's been there. He's worked his way up. Now he's like I don't know. He's got a lot of region that he's responsible for all the maintenance that JB Hunt does.
Okay.
That's what he does. So, and I've been over to his facility there. He was like David, he was supporting Reese Across America. So I talked to his team one Christmas season and talked to them about that. So, and then inside every unit, you have mechanics in the Army. So I had mechanics, when I was a company commander, battalion commander, squadron commander, brigade commander, CG at Huachuca. At every echelon of command, you have maintenance personnel. And we have all kinds of trucks, from Humvees to what we call MRAPs, which are mine-resistant ambush vehicles, big up-armor things. And then, of course, when I was in a tank battalion in Korea, there was all kinds of maintenance with those guys, all kinds of trucks. I worked out of a 577, I think it was, a big track thing. What I could tell you is you don't turn your diesel vehicle off in Korea at night in the wintertime. Because if you do, not only will you not have heat, you won't start in the morning. You have to bring a maintenance contact team in to jump that thing off to get it running again. And if the battalion commander wants to move and you're standing around with your broke, vehicle there, you're a big loser.
Yeah. Not good.
Not good.
Central Arkansas Truck and Trailer is a family-owned and operated shop that always puts the driver first. That's why we trust them to take care of our owner-operators. The new year can bring some big changes, so be on the lookout for new PM and oil change specials coming your way soon. Don't forget to stop in, grab a cup of coffee, and check out their newly renovated driver's lounge with snacks, drinks, and a TV to relax while you get your truck fixed. Central Arkansas Truck and Trailer also has new scheduling features coming soon, letting you schedule services ahead of time. Less hassle, less downtime, more time on the road. They will also keep a complete service record history for every customer. So next time you're on the yard, don't just pass by, stop in and visit Central Arkansas Truck and Trailer and let them know you heard it here on the Oakley Podcast. Hey, I want to thank everybody to listening to this episode. Wow, what an episode. It just gives me chills as I listened to that, and actually as I did it, I don't know if you can see my face on some of this stuff when he was talking about it, but it was just fantastic. And as always, I appreciate you guys listening to the Oakley Podcast. I mean, you are it. You are our advertising. I appreciate you sharing it with people, liking it, subscribing. So we can continue to move on up with this Oakley Podcast and touch people out there that we've never touched, because we want to put a good light on truck drivers in general, and educate the public a little bit. But I hope you enjoyed this last episode, and it was all about Major General Bob Walters. What a fantastic guy. So check us out on YouTube. All our socials Annabelle takes care of for us. Be sure and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're all there, and let us know if there's anything we can do, any topics you like, you want us to talk about, we'll do it. Appreciate y'all. We'll talk to you next week.